Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. Something completely different. Power supply and this Dell 720 H2C. Not looking forward to this just because it looks pretty complicated in terms of the assembly here. Normal PC power supply, you can get them out pretty easy, but I'm probably going to have to take out all of the drive assembly here. The cooling, it's got a liquid cooling system here, that's going to need to come out. Take out all the graphics cards, all the boards and things. I've got like a capture card and stuff in there. It's SLI, as you can see. I've got a couple of 8800 GTXs in there at the moment. So it's pretty old kit this, really. It's 2007, 2008 vintage, if you can call it that. But this is my main PC still at the moment. And it runs really well, aside from the fact that there's these power supply problems. And it's going to be capacitors, I'm damn sure it's capacitors in the power supply. It's a very common problem in PCs, especially some of these Dell models. And typically what you get with these Dells is when you switch it on, it'll spin up, you can hear the fans and things, main fan kick in, and then it power cycles down, power cycles up, power cycles down. So you can hear the fan sort of start and then stop and then start and then stop, for several cycles, and then suddenly it'll come on. But you've got to be careful. One of the things I've found, I'm still using XP on this machine at the moment. I've got this dual boot, I've got Vista and stuff on there as well, but I'm still using XP, believe it or not. No real reason to move to anything else just for the moment. I've got a lot of software used for programming diagnostics and various other things, EEPROM programmers, other diagnostic equipment stuff, and it's all sort of XP based. So for the moment, I've got no plans to move on to another machine. So it's important I really get this fixed. I forgot what I was going to say then, I sidetracked myself. Yeah, so they're not a bad machine, these. You can pick these up for £400–500 off eBay now, second hand. But if you get the model I've got here, this will run at 3.3 gigahertz. You can run it faster if you've got proper cooling and stuff on there. My cooling is a bit in need of some servicing, as you can see. There's loads of dust and stuff in it. But I mean, it's running okay. The cooling side of things is not a real problem there. But you can run these up to about 3.6 gigahertz, and it's quad core. Extreme, one of the extreme processors. I forget how much cache they've got. Is it 8 meg or something? It might be. I think you can get a 12 meg version as well. And it'll, it runs really well. Especially if you've got an SLI, you can put a couple of 780s or something in there. In SLI, and it'll run all the latest games and things without an issue. Anyway, I'll start. I'm not really sure I'm going to start. I'll start by disconnecting these drives here. I think, if I remember, it's been a while since I've been inside this actually. Yeah, if I remember right, there's like a plastic clip there, and if you unclip that, then this piece of plastic comes out here. I'm going to have to vacuum this as I do it as well, so because obviously there's a ton of dust in here. It's long overdue in terms of a clean. And then if I turn the camera sideways, you're probably going to be able to see, disconnect power going to these SLI graphics cards here. That's that done. And then you should be able to use these clips and things here to slide your boards out and stuff. Don't forget your SLI bridge as well if you've got an SLI set up like this. And then it's going to be a case of all of these screws that hold in the cooling system there, and just having a good look around. I think there's like one right down inside there. You can see it right at the back, sort of up there somewhere. Yeah, so I can get the cooling out. So let's see how I get on. Just thought to show you how dirty this is inside, really. And I've vacked out the tops of these cards. So just look, the main fan assembly there. It's just thick with dust and fluff and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, main board's not too bad by the looks of things. Don't see any swollen caps on the main board either. That's something it's worth checking whilst I'm here. And if you've got an ESR meter, perhaps check out any questionable caps while you're there as well. But I'm fully expecting this just to be the power supply, really, just because of the symptoms. Once it warms up, it's fine. Right, so you can see there I've got the cooling unit out. I'll just show you underneath actually. I was surprised. This whole thing just mates with the underneath, you know, on the underneath there, on the directly on the CPU, head of the CPU there on the die. So I'll show you. In order to get this cooling thing out, there's the screws, and you can see where they were mounted here. There was a position there, position there. I think there were 3. There was one that went down there, and then there's 3 on the other side, and there's one right down the front where that black mount is just near my finger there. And then you've got a power connector that comes off and goes up the way here to, where's it gone now? I can't see the other piece of it. There it is. To that, so you've got to disconnect that. And then there's 2 connections to the board. You've got one down here, there, and then one little one there. That's it, and then the whole thing just lifts out. So I can put some fresh thermal paste and stuff on there, which I will do. I'll clean the top of that off because it's not had any since day one. But right now I'm going to clean up all of this dust and fluff and stuff out of here and give the main board a bit of a clean. But yeah, not as bad as I thought. I thought that was going to be a lot harder than it was. I think the difficult bit now is going to be removing all of the cables for the you know, the power supply for the board, power supply to all the drives, to all of my SATA drives here. As you can see, I've got 4 SATA hard disks in there. So let's give that a crack. Right, so I took this fan assembly out. It's just held in by another screw just down there, and then there's 2 plastic clips that hold the back part of the fan housing. Then you can get into the fan, so it's not perfectly clean, but as you can see, all the fluff and everything's gone out of there. Another thing I have to do, obviously, disconnect all the power from all the backs of the drives, remove all the drives which are there, sort of ready to be cleaned. Unscrewed the power supply. Power supply now moves forwards and backwards. But I'm guessing, you know, you can see here this piece of plastic, you push it down, you know, it separates from that piece there. I'm guessing this whole assembly, the drive assembly bay, has got to come out. So I'm going to focus on the screws at the bottom there. There's 2 in each bay, and just see what happens when I've removed those. Right, well, this has been a bit of a nightmare. I removed the drive bays with those 4 screws I showed you, no problem, and then the fan. It's got those little push fit things and it just slides through, but you've got to disconnect all the connectors and things on the board at this side in order to do that. And then you'll see that the power cables for the SATA drives are down that little gap down there, and it's not going to be big enough to get the connectors out of, so pain in the arse. You've got to bend, see if I can get this on camera, this piece of metal here, you can see this was upright like that one there, so you've got to bend it over in order to get to the screw head below it, and then there's a screw just down there, and then you'll see that if you just put a bit of pressure there, you can actually widen that side wide enough probably to get the connectors out through that gap there. So what a nightmare. And there we have it, 100 million bloody wires and power supply removed. That was just an absolute nightmare. I can't believe how unserviceable some of these PCs are. This is a Dell, as I say. It seriously put me off buying Dell again. I mean, to be honest, the medium-sized servers and things, you know, I've worked on them in the past, and desktops and things, and they're usually alright, but this large sort of full tower PC, you know, it could be better designed. I remember in the days of the old IBM PS2 PCs, where you get plastic clip, you'd have 4 screws like this on the back, and then you'd have a couple of plastic clips, and you'd pull it and it would detach, and inside here would be, you know, a multi-connector harness or something at the back, which would, you know, connect to the rest of the machine, and you could just, you know, plug and play, you know, just basically just unplug them, you know, without having to take the case off. You could do the same with the drives and the hard disk and everything. You know, long gone are those days now. Back to the realms of, you know, stupid designs. I mean, look at that cable. Look at the way that, can you see that PATA cable down there? The way that's folded, creased to fit in the case. You know, that was done at manufacture. That's just ridiculous. I can't believe that. But yeah, there's a ton of dust in here to clean up. Another fan to clean up. I need to take these boards out and clean these 2 boards yet as well, and then you know, I can start reassembling. Before I do that, I'm going to clean up this power supply now and whip the lid off and have a look inside. Well, this is an absolute nightmare. It seriously is. These things are so hard to get into, they really are. I had to take off the bottom piece of metal there that holds the case together, and the top part. Looking at the caps from what I can see inside, I don't see any swollen caps or anything. From the ones I can see, and I can see most of the board here. There's a lot that are covered by the wires and things there, but you know, I was still determined to get in here because I thought, you know, it sounds like a cat problem. But I don't know if you can see this. I'll try and zoom in. After cleaning, just vacuuming this off, you got some dry joints here. I don't know, I'm not going to try and not touch this because It's probably likely got some pretty high voltages still in some of these caps. Where's the screwdriver gone now? I lost it. This is the problem with using macro. Let me get the screwdriver on camera. Here we are. Yeah, I'm not sure how well this is going to come out, but you see this little, looks like a transistor or something here. The middle pin, just where the screwdriver point is there, it's pretty dry. I reckon that's a dry joint. It's the same with these. There's 3 there and a little line, 3 there and a little line, and probably the left hand one there as well. So I think this is just dry joint. It's symptomatic, the symptoms there, the behaviour would suggest that it possibly is actually, in the sense that you can power it up and after just literally 30 or 40 seconds it'll be fine. But you will get that, you can get that when it's cold, that resetting thing. When it first powers up, when you first switch it on, it switches on, switches off, switches on, and I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be that middle pin there, because it does look like a very dry joint to me. I will try and separate these. Well, I will separate these further. I'll take these screws out. Just zoom out again. I'll take these screws out in the 4 corners here, and then this board should lift. Should be able to give me a look at the inside, and clear visibility of the caps and things. And I'll perhaps measure a few of them, but yeah, my immediate thoughts with this is I don't think it's capacitors. Right, so I've got Super Macro on here just to try and show you. If you look at that middle pin, hopefully, I don't know how close I'm going to be able to get, hopefully you can see that is clearly a dry joint. That is the problem. I've taken, like I say, I've had these boards right out, and I've had a good look at the caps. There's no signs of anything wrong with any of the caps. And I did put my ESR meter on a couple of caps there, and well, several of the caps, and I can't see anything wrong at all. It's clearly that dry joint. I don't know if you can see this. I'll just see if I can show you with a screwdriver. Just top right and tip the middle pin there. That it's clearly a dry joint. Hopefully that's coming across visibly. Whilst I'm just waiting for the solder iron to heat up here, I just thought I'd show you why this has been a particularly unpleasant experience. I mean, look at the state, I've got components all over the floor. To take the memory out, to take the video cards out, I had to take the base off, take the drive bays out, take the drives out, take the cooling system off, all to get the power supply out. That's absolutely ludicrous. I don't know what Dell were thinking when they designed this. Still got a lot of clean-up work and stuff in there to do, get rid of all that dust before I reassemble it. But yeah, it should run a lot better. Well, it will do once I fix that dry joint, and it should run a lot cooler. Especially when I've got some new thermal paste on the CPU there. But I mean, look at the shit in the RAM slots here. I need to vac all that out, make sure I've not got any dust in there. I'm going to get problems with memory if I'm not careful. But yeah, a couple of words of warning when you're dealing with these. One thing I do, and I've shown this before, anything to do with power supplies, you've got a power supply inside it, a console with a power supply, or in this case a PC power supply. Switch the power off, but then switch the power switch on the PC power supply itself, or on the front of the PC or whatever, on. So you've not got mains, but you've switched it on, and you'll see, sure, all the the LEDs will just flicker or whatever, and it'll just go off, and that will have engaged. You've engaged the power switch, and there'll be some draw there, and some of the lines and things, and it'll just suck up anything out of some of the capacitors that are there. They should dissipate any voltage they've got in there. It should get pulled. Some of them have resistors and things over, high meg resistors and things over them to gradually drain them over a period of time and stuff. And naturally, they will do that on their own anyway if they're left for 24, 48 hours. But be very careful when you're doing this. You've got to be really careful, not to touch any of the components there, just to make sure where you've got a capacitor. Because if you've got a capacitor, it could be holding a couple of hundred volts, and you could get a pretty nasty belt off. I'm going to resolder, as I showed, those 6 ones next to that, where that dry joint is as well, because they're looking a bit suspicious as well. In fact, one of them from this angle looks like another clear dry joint. But yeah, sorry, I'm digressing. So be really careful, and the thing is, you've got to really pay attention when you disable it, when you're disassembling power supply like this. Firstly, like I say, make sure you don't touch any of the capacitors, because you don't want a belt on there. You could short them out with, I don't know, 1 meg resistor or something, just leave it for a few minutes with a 1 meg resistor over it or something like that. Or I just use a screwdriver sometimes on these things, just short from the plus to minus on an electrolytic cap. Obviously, just be careful there. But make sure, pay attention to where you're taking off bits of shielding. Not necessarily just the shielding, but isolating pieces like that, plastic things. and just, you know, be really cautious about the way you reassemble it, because the last thing you want is something short into somewhere where it shouldn't be doing and stuff. And I certainly wouldn't be anywhere near it when you power it back up. You know, if you try and work on this in a disassembled state, as this is now, I wouldn't work with this metal round here. I'd remove that completely and try and separate the boards as best you can, and inspect it thoroughly before you switch it on. You know, even those heat sinks, you know, they might not be designed to touch each other. You know, if those heat sinks were, you know, those two there, if they were to touch each other when you power it up, you never know. Depending on the design, you could blow something up. And if you're anywhere near it and you're touching anything, obviously you're going to get a pretty lethal electric shock. I certainly wouldn't want anyone to die as a result of following this video, and you know, be very, very mindful of, you know, some stuff's reasonably safe to work on. You know, if you had a problem with your board and you thought it was the caps on your board, it's a lot safer to work on this. Dealing with very low voltages and stuff, you're not going to kill yourself probably working on a motherboard like this, or on a hard disk, or yeah, anything else within here. But when it comes to power supplies, it's a bit like monitors. You know, you just got to be really careful. You really have, you know. Anyway, solder iron's heated up now, so I'll redo those solder points. Right, so power supply reassembled, dry joints resoldered. Like I say, when you're assembling this, just pay close attention to how it came apart. You want to make sure you get all the pieces of isolation and stuff in the right places, and you shouldn't have any sort of edges sticking out and stuff. Just make sure everything is totally back together correct. Yeah, I've just given it a bit of a vac out here, cleaned the fan, vacked out the area around there, so it is just a case of reassembling this now, I think. I also need to take that card out down there and just give that a bit of a vac, so I think I'll just do that quickly before I stick the power supply back in. Right, well, whilst I was in here, I thought I'd strip down the graphics cards as well, just to get all this shit off the fans. I mean, look at the state of that and the heat sinks. Interesting thing is, this is an EVGA branded card, and it's covering the screw mounts. And I thought, I'll just rip it off. I'm not that bothered, you know, these things are probably not worth much second hand anyway, to 10, 20 quid. So I thought I'll rip off the cover there. And lo and behold, underneath is the original NVIDIA, because I've already got one of these. As you can see here, this one was an NVIDIA, and I had to swap one of them out originally because one of them failed. The VGA chips, you know, I've got it in the loft somewhere. I could fix it at some point. I just can't be bothered with it really. So this was what I swapped it for, an EVGA of the same spec. It's just interesting that there's nothing different. It is exactly, you know, the original card. I'd love to know how that works, and how they managed to sell them cheaper. A bit beyond me. But anyway, yeah, it's annoying. You've got to puncture holes in the plastic there to get to it, and obviously this is a bit of a state now. You'll probably clean up with some ice pop actually, because most of this is glue on here, so it's got the original label. You know, this will peel off, and you can see here, well, it peels off, and you've just got the original label underneath. So yeah, I might do that, but yeah, the main thing is just clean this up now, reassemble it. It's taken me about 2 hours actually just to reassemble this now, but it's just the graphics cards, as you can see, need to go back in. Can't get that dust out of there without massively disassembling the cooling system, and I can't be bothered with it, to be honest. It's cleaned out as best as I can, but hopefully this will work. So here's the inside of the other one. As you can see, it was well worth doing. Totally caked in fluff and dust. The other one's back in there now. Something that's I've just noticed, and I've never noticed this in all the years I've had this machine. How you can see this? Connector there, P3 6 amp, P15 10 amp. So there are 2 of these for each for the SLI. You know, for the video cards. They're interchangeable. You could put these round either way, and I've never noticed this. So I've got the dilemma now of wondering which one goes to which. You know, which the connectors here on the graphics card. So I'll have to do a little bit of research on that. I'll report back in a minute as to what I find out. There we go, all working, came on first time. I've had it switched on and off a few times. I ran into some problems. You'd probably come across this yourself. If you swap your graphics cards around, you get them in the wrong slots, you start getting problems with the drivers. So just bear that in mind. I had to swap them back, and then I just did a system restore. It's far easier because I was getting all sorts of problems with drivers. Wouldn't see one of the cards. Could have been a bit loose, I don't know. But everything's working fine now, as you can see, got the desktop up there. So yeah, really pleased with that. So it was just a dry joint, nothing wrong with the capacitors at all. Anyway, thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.